Well, good afternoon and welcome to Trowel Talk Live. My name is Nancy McDonald. I will be your moderator today. Belinda Bacobin is monitoring our chat for questions, and that's where we'd like you to put the questions, please. And I'm very pleased to introduce Denise Bonomo as our speaker on fall mums. I don't know about you, but those colorful mums at garden centers just seem to jump into my cart when I'm going through. And I think we all like to have that last hurrah of color before winter. So Denise, over to you.
Fall mums have been a favorite of mine since I was a young child, and I think I too was very attracted to the vibrant colors that they provide, especially in the summer or in the fall as the summer blooms begin to fade. This time of year, we find all kinds of mums outside of grocery stores and department stores, and certainly at garden centers. And people put them into their gardens and into planters this time of year. These florist mums, or the ones that are potted in the early spring and blooming this time of year, are not very good at overwintering. They really are used as an annual. But as we were discussing actually just before this live stream began, people have had cases of the sort of fall potted mums managing to winter over. And so if you wish, take them out in the fall. As I said, use them as an annual. But if you leave them in until spring cleanup, you may be lucky and get some of them to winter over. Hardy chrysanthemums, which are called milliformum, however, they're generally planted in the spring as a perennial. They're hardy in zones 5 to 9, but in the lower range, they're best planted in a sheltered place and covered with mulch in the winter. Because they can suffer from stem and root rot, especially if planted in low areas, it's best to level the soil around them with compost and then cover them well with evergreen boughs to help keep air circulation during the winter. 2,000 years ago is when Confucius first wrote about mums, and they were described as a simple golden flower. These days, hybrids include many dramatic fall harvest shades, including gold, orange, pink, purple, burgundy, and white. Chrysanthemum is an ancient plant family of the Astereca composia. It's the largest family of flowering plants with 1,500 genera and 2,300 species. When looking at them casually, their composite flower seems like a simple flower, but in fact, they're complex and highly specialized. Take a closer look and you'll find that there are many small flowerets, some numbering into the hundreds. And there are two types of florets, those which are called rays, the longer petals, which are sometimes confused as petals, where they in fact are individual flowers, and discs, which are sometimes mistaken as a flower center. In the 4th century, Buddhist monks carried chrysanthemums to Japan, where they were part of the emperor's crest and a symbol of the royal family. It's thought they were introduced into North America in the 1800s, although there are indigenous varieties, particularly Chrysanthemum articum or the Arctic daisy. When spring chrysanthemums become available in nurseries, select one that is bushy and has green leaves and tight buds. Yellow leaves indicate overwatering. Prune back a third of the stems before planting. Now, mums prefer full sun, at least 5 to 6 hours a day, well-drained soil that contains organic matter. They will grow in partial shade, but tend to get leggy. When selecting a location, consider also nighttime exposure to light. Chrysanthemums blooming occurs in response to shorter days and longer nights. So avoid gardens that are flooded with street light or your neighbor's security lights, because it does affect the bloom. When ready to plant, if you would like to have chrysanthemums for cut bouquets, remove all the side buds throughout the growing season. This will encourage one central bloom. When ready to cut, use a sharp knife and cut on an angle. Morning is the best time to cut blooms, as the plants will be most hydrated. Remove any leaves that would be under the water. Set the stems away in a cool, dark space to rest overnight. Add a small amount of balanced soluble fertilizer weekly. Following these instructions will allow you to enjoy the blooms for up to 3 to 4 weeks. Propagating chrysanthemums can be done by seed, cuttings, or plant division. Most chrysanthemums today are hybrids, so using seeds to propagate will not guarantee you getting the same kind of bloom as the parent plant had. It is better, if you are looking to get an identical plant to the one that was growing, that you in fact take cuttings or divide by planting flower or plants from your friends or neighbors or nursery. And that's the fastest way to get mature plants growing in your garden. In the spring, when new growth is 4 to 6 inches, dig out the mature plant, shake off the soil, and then cut between the stems and gently pull them apart. Throw away old woody parts. The new plants can be planted directly into prepared soil or into pots or planters. It's also easy to take slips of plants like are shown in the photo, and they can be rooted either directly in soil or if you wish, but it's important to keep the soil moist, or they can be rooted in water. Do note that some of the more exotic looking chrysanthemums are patented and cannot be propagated without permission. This tends to be more common in the United States, but if you are planting plants from a nursery, do check the plant label. Chrysanthemums are known to be able to be used as a pest control because of a neurotoxin called primethrin that is produced by the plant. This generally tends to be concentrated in the center disc portion of the plant. And it can be collected when the plant is in full bloom by taking the stems, cutting and hanging the flowers upside down to dry. And then once they are dry, collecting the center discs into a container. As I said, it contains a neurotoxin that will kill insects, but it is a general pesticide, so it will affect things such as bees, although it won't harm mammals or birds, but it also can affect water creatures, so fish and those kinds of things can be disturbed and killed by the Promethean. Things are changing in terms of commercial development of organic Promethean because the commercial operations have generally been in Northeast Africa, but with climate change, it in fact is becoming too hot to nurture these plants. So there have been some efforts in Australia and in the eastern US states who are getting longer heat and higher heat spells now to develop commercial operations. If you decide you want to try making your own pesticide, as I said, you need to collect the disc flowers. Some people suggest that you just sprinkle the ground disc flowers around in your garden to repel insects. Others suggest using it in a spray, but it is also helpful just to plant the chrysanthemum plants themselves. And just like other plants such as marigolds, it's the odor as well as the Prometheum that affects the insects. So this is an option that you can use. Mums have been a flower of inspiration in artwork. In the late 1800s, both Monet, whose painting is shown on the screens, and Renoir used chrysanthemums as a theme or as an object for artwork. The Japanese also use mums in decorating fashion and design. Many Oriental fabrics come with chrysanthemum embellishments on them. 101 years ago, Gage Park, which is located in Hamilton, Ontario, started having a fall garden show that featured mums. They have over 100,000 blooms and more than 200 varieties usually displayed in this showcase. Each year has a different theme. The one displayed, in fact, was 2019, the last year that they had a festival prior to COVID, and it was a circus theme. Mill's China Shop, which is was a very old and established china shop in Hamilton, made plates with Paragon in England, displaying or using the mums as a theme. The Mill's China Shop was opened in 1924 and was one of the first shops in North America to sell English fine bone china. The shop earned such a reputation that Franklin Delano Roosevelt's mother came to the store in the 1930s to buy china for the White House. Unfortunately, changing times and desire to have dinnerware, which was often given as a wedding gift in past days, the china shop had closed in 1983 and is no longer open. This is the pattern that was inspired by the Hamilton Gage Park Fall Mum Festival. It is called mums, and this china happens to be the pattern that my mother chose for her wedding trousseau. And I have this set of china now and still enjoy using it on a regular basis for festivities in my family.
Thank you very much, Denise. That's absolutely fascinating. I really like all the extra detail at the end about some of the history of the uses of chrysanthemums, and plainly that goes back a very, very long way. While we're just waiting for questions to appear in the chat, which I welcome people to put in, I have a couple of my own questions. So I'm wondering, is it possible with those beautiful mums or even smaller ones to overwinter them indoors carefully? Can we do that? I think you might have mentioned a little bit about that, but can we bring them in and leave them dormant somewhere?
Yes, you can overwinter them. It would be recommended that you cut them back to sort of 4 to 6 inches in height, and then in the spring either plant them out, or if you want to start them earlier, you can bring them out into the light and begin watering them. They do not require the light and dark requirements of plants such as things like poinsettias and that type of thing. But certainly it is possible to try and overwinter them and put them out in the spring. Again, it really depends on sort of the quality of the plant when you are bringing it in, and you don't want the roots to be getting waterlogged, because it is a problem for chrysanthemums to have roots that are too wet, because they will mildew and get root rot.
Yes, and you'd mentioned mildew earlier, so I'm wondering if there are any other diseases or pests that they're prone to, although I suppose they must be pretty resilient if they've lasted all these thousands of years. They can't be that susceptible to too much, but
Yes.
do they get pests?
Well, in terms of pests, because they do have the promethium produced within the flower, they do tend to sort of keep away the pests that might otherwise bother them.
So we have a question from Nancy McDonald, and she says she's wondering if you could take cuttings now and then grow them inside over winter.
Yes, certainly. That would be good as well. And as I said, you could either pot them up in a pot, or root them first and then put them into pots and grow them over the winter.
Yes, and I imagine then by then they'd be ready to be easily potted out with a good root system in the spring, which gives them lots of time to get established.
Yes, for the next winter, and would bloom in the fall, definitely, having had the summer out in the garden.
Right. Okay, well, that seems like a pretty good option, actually. So
yes.
It's always so sad when you see them in the shop, and then you think, well, I could buy all these, and then maybe they won't make it through the winter, even if I plant them. So yes, that's possibly a good alternative. You also mentioned getting them in the spring from nurseries. Is that, I haven't seen them, is that because I haven't really looked for them, or are they rare as find in nurseries in the springtime?
They certainly aren't as available as they are in the fall. But if you look in nurseries in the spring or ask about them, you can certainly get them. Or I think it is a matter of sort of looking for them. I haven't checked online to see whether or not there are options for getting chrysanthemums in the spring from some of the nurseries, some of the bigger nurseries, but it's a possibility. But, and as I said before, it's not common to get them from seed catalogs, because, as I said, most of the blooms that we're familiar with are hybrids, and so you won't get them. You won't get them from planting seed.
Right. somebody, Jay Johnson, I think, has written that they've had success the first time over wintering one mum plant, and it's now triple the size from last year and ready for the blooms to pop. So that's a really great confirmation of a method that we have as an option. So thank you very much. That's quite inspiring now.
Yes.
You were talking about using the flowers as to make pesticides, and is there any sort of guidance available as to the quote dosage you might want to use if you tried that yourself?
Oh, actually, it's just sort of identified that you would. I didn't come across anything that had specific guidance about amounts. It was just suggested that in the areas where you have plants having insect pest problems, that you lightly sprinkle it, or as I said, mixing it with water. Though I don't have dilution rate, and sprinkling it onto the plants.
Might be a time for some trial and error, I suppose, just see. But presumably some sort of dilution would be required.
Yes.
Very, very clever of the plant to have its own built-in defense mechanism as well.
Yeah. Well, it's also Promethium in its organic state has also been laboratory copied. So many of the commercial products that are available are not organic. They haven't actually come from the plants. They've been synthetically made for commercial production.
Yes,
that's usually the material that's in what we used to think of as mosquito coils and those kinds of things. We have we have such a wide variety of sort of machines that that kill insects nowadays, that I guess mosquito coils have kind of gone the way of the Mills China shop, and are hard to come by. I actually haven't looked for them recently, but I think they may. That was, however, a product that contained the Promethium.
All right, we have another question here, just for asking for a recap, really. This questioner missed the beginning, so they're wondering about whether there are perennial chrysanthemums and are they only annual in Ottawa. So perhaps you could just repeat that little piece of guidance about how to distinguish between the two.
These potted up plants that are so widely spread this time of year are generally planted as annuals by many people and discarded at the end of the season. Now, we have had discussions, and there are several people who have had some success in wintering these over. And if the mums are planted in their favorite kind of location, so sunny and warm, well drained, but watered regularly, but the roots shouldn't sit in water, so it's important to pay attention to your watering. These may, but they aren't generally seen as plants that are perennial. There are many kinds of and many colors of hardy mums. The chrysanthemum, I think it's milliform, is the botanical. Milliformum is the hardier plant, and they will grow in zones 5 to 9. So you can grow them in Ottawa, and several people have quite a bit of success with those plants. As I said at the beginning, when you first get them in the spring, or when you get them from your neighbor or somebody else by having plants divided, in the spring you want to cut them back fairly well down to sort of about 6 inches so that the plants fill out, because they will get quite leggy if they're allowed to just grow in their natural time. You want to stop cutting them back about 100 days, so roughly 3.5 months before you're hoping that your blooms are going to come out, so that that you got to get a good display of nice full plants.
Okay, that sounds great. And so we're just about at the end of our session, but I'd like to remind everybody, if questions occur to you later, the Master Gardeners has an email helpline, and we will answer your question. And you can find the address on our website. So now I'm going to hand us back to Nancy.
Well, thank you very much, Denise. I think I'm going to go out and take some cuttings this afternoon and try to do some overwintering, because that's what I was doing in the garden this morning, taking cuttings of some plants. So next week, please join us again for No Dig Borders. And actually, Belinda, you're going to be presenting next week, so looking forward to that.